All right. We are on again for another episode of the Seed Network. I'm your host, Bol Mayen, and I'm with Ayuol Manyok. So this is going to be a very interesting episode. I think I pronounced her name wrong, but see how we go. But Ayuol, introduce yourself.
Wow, that's a very loaded question. Introduce yourself. My name is Ayuol Manyok. I was born in Kakuma refugee camp. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia. I'm now currently living in London and I work as a model. And I'm very passionate. I'm invested in the livelihood of South Sudanese people.
I love that. So the reason why I wanted to come sit down with you is because I just like how far we've come as people. And I like seeing people in other sports, in the academia world, in modeling. And I wanted to come sit down with you to know and understand why you got to who you are. But before we get to that point, where were you born and how was that?
I was born in northwest Nairobi, in a place called Kakuma refugee camp. A lot of South Sudanese people were born there. It's, I think, the third largest refugee camp in the world. It's housed a lot of South Sudanese folks, Ethiopians, Somalis, you name it, from mainly East African countries. How was that? I wouldn't know. I'd have to ask my mom. But what she did say, I remember my mom, it was my birthday one time, and I was like, oh, Mama, it's my birthday. And she was like, oh, you need to do it very, which translates to everybody was hungry when you were born. I was like, all right, cool. Thanks, man. Like, that sounds awful. But those were the circumstances in which I was born in.
For sure. So you were born there and you don't remember much because you moved when you were a young age. What age were you when you moved to your next location?
So when I moved to Australia, Perth, I was about 5, 6. I remember a couple of things from Kakuma, but nothing as extensive as my older siblings or cousins.
Yeah, right. So how was the move and what was it like growing up in Perth, Australia?
I think kids, one thing that is so precious about kids, we can move and settle into the next place quite easily. It's not an issue. So moving, I knew that there was something that was coming that was going to change our family's trajectory. I remember going to meetings, traveling far away to have meetings with immigration. So I remember those kinds of events occurring. So I knew something was changing. I remember the language that was being used around me. So I knew that we were going to move. I just didn't know where. I didn't know what that meant. Growing up in Perth, retrospectively, looking at it now as an adult living in London, I think that was a good upbringing. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's a good upbringing.
That's good because I never been to Perth. I was glad that I grew up in Melbourne City specifically, and that was good because it was very multicultural, and I got to fit in with a lot of different people from all around the world. Did you have that experience growing up in Perth, being from South Sudan?
Absolutely. One of my earliest memories from Perth was going to an IEC school. So the first 2 years, so I literally landed in Australia smack bang year 1, year 2. So I went to an IE school. And
what is that for people that don't know?
Yeah, so an IEC stands for English Intensive Course. So you get into one of these schools and it's the main focus is for you to understand English, to learn English, sentence structure, phonetics, synonyms, homonyms, you know what the curriculum tries to teach us, all that. So I think at the time, at my age, I think I picked up on a lot of things quite easily. I was already I knew how to speak Tongajing. I knew how to speak a little bit of Kiswahili. So learning English wasn't as difficult because you're a child. You're a sponge, so you're ready to take on all these new learnings. So yeah, it was amazing. And then I met all these kids from all over the world who were also part of the program for whatever reason. I had kids from Pakistan. I remember having kids from Russia. I remember having kids just from all over the globe being at this one school. So we were all in there trying to learn English.
How many siblings do you have and how did that help you with learning English and learning Swahili and keeping that language from what you bought from Kakuma?
Unfortunately, I did not keep Kiswahili. So I think my little brain was
or Dinka.
Okay, Tongajing, easy. So
Tongajing.
I've got 4 siblings. I've got 3 older, 1 younger. I think one of the biggest benefits of having siblings that are older than you you have a model of people that have gone before you who've chosen different paths, and you can like different paths, and you can kind of evaluate the chosen path and then see where you fit in all of that. So my eldest brother, what did he introduce to me? He introduced to me reggae music all the time because he was the eldest, he could play whatever he wanted in the house. So it was always reggae music. My older sister, what did she introduce to me? At a younger age, she was the baddest. Like, she was just like, she would transgress against like, you know, rules and regulations within the household. And I think that was pretty cool. She broke a lot of rules. And then my older brother, Joel, what did Joel teach her? Joel was just on his own time. And I like that. So I think I maybe like grabbed a bit of that from Joel. And then Woody was the youngest. That's the favorite, you know. He can do no wrong. He can do whatever he wants. So yeah. I've learned a couple of things from my siblings.
Who are you most closest with now?
Probably my eldest sister, Atiye. Yeah.
And why so?
I think maybe because we're both women and we share that common experience. We're both also quite close to our mother as well, and we treasure our mother quite similarly. She's also got 4 children of her own, which I adore and I care about and everything to me. So there's also that. And yeah, I think it's so interesting because sibling relationships, not a lot has been theorized about what that means. And then again, in this very like niche community of ours, South Sudanese Australians or South Sudanese growing up Australian, we don't really have a lot to lead off on. But I think I kind of present like the new South Sudanese Australian. I'm quite far away from her, but she still has kept a lot of things, and I think we both learn from each other all the time. I think that's like the benefits.
Your household sounds very energetic. How would you describe your household growing up? I can't hear your answer from that reaction.
All right. So my mom worked a lot, like a lot of South Sudanese mothers. So she wasn't around much. And we would be left home with like my older siblings. And whatever happened in the household, I was literally writing that shit down, ready to tell my mom. I was telling everybody, you made me feel unsafe, guess what? I'm going to tell mom when she gets home. And she going to have an issue with you. So was I the snitch in a sense? I don't know. But I did tell my siblings a lot But it was fun. Everyone kind of did their own thing. But whenever I was made to feel unsafe, I was always telling on them. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. And how's the relationship with your mum?
Oh, mum, that's bestie.
Haja, how's the relationship with Haja?
Relationship with Haja. Haja is one of the best, like literally the bestest friends that I have right now in my life.
That's good. What's one important thing you reckon she's taught you that you've carried on, or one thing that didn't make sense growing up but it makes total sense now?
Get the fuck out of bed. Yeah, my mom. One thing about my mom, bro, it came rain, sunshine. This woman always got out of bed. And I
love that. And that's one thing that I always talk about, and I'm going to interrupt you again, that I always talk about with South Sudanese women and how important that is, just to get up and go and just keep on moving forward. Yeah. And I love that so much. And I'm so glad that that's one thing you've realized and you've appreciated that she taught you that, have a way, but I'm glad you learned that.
I don't always do it, but I look back on that and why she would have instilled it in me. Like, I know why she would have. Like, she wants me to do really well in life. And, like, the people who do really well in life, they get up and go. They get up and go always. So, yeah, it's a get up and go mentality a little bit sometimes.
That's amazing. I love that. What's one thing you found difficult growing up as a South Sudanese woman?
Damn. We don't have all night, so when we talk about womanhood, I think for me, there was this deeper level of awareness which was instigated by like seeking out knowledge, where I was like, oh, I don't really like my community. I don't really like the way women are treated. So that was quite difficult for me to kind of wrangle with, because of course I wanted to be South Sudanese, but what I was seeing about the ways in which like South Sudanese women were treated within that community, I don't know, I didn't want a bar of it. Yeah, I didn't really want a bar of it at all.
And I think another thing that I've been talking about the whole time in this whole project is how strong mums are. But one thing that we haven't talked about yet is why they are strong. Obviously, they're strong because they have to continue moving forward. They also had to be strong because of what they faced. You know, whether it was from the husbands, whether it was from the oldest brother, or there was a lot of trauma that they would have faced. So it's important that you brought that up. What's the one thing that a lot of people don't know that South Sudanese women have to go through?
I think the one that's come to mind right now, which is certainly not indicative of what I always think about, would definitely be child rearing, like looking after kids, teaching kids, looking after kids. I always saw a disparity in that. One thing as a kid, you can kind of observe a lot of things and you can be like, oh, that doesn't really feel right, especially when you're in between cultures, you know. You see there's like an Australian culture that people uphold, whether that's like European influence, etc., and then you go back to your little cocoon of being South Sudanese, and like men they abdicate their responsibilities as fathers to like the women in their families. So I think that was like the biggest, like, I don't like this at all. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, you know, that was when you were 19. What was it like after 19 and, you know, finishing high school, and what was life like after high school?
Confusing. Definitely confusing. Not like on a conscious level. I look back now and I was like, I was definitely like very confused. But, you know, I feel like I'm always confused. I withdrew from the community. I remember my mom, she was always like, let's go to church, let's go. I was like, I don't want to go to church. I don't want
So before we continue about how it was like after high school, you withdrew from the community because of the way women were getting treated, or was there more to that?
Literally, I think it was like Christian dogma. It was a mix of things. I think Christian dogma and then cultural beliefs and values seeping into Christian dogma, and then like just the cultural aspects and cultural beliefs. I just was like, and no one will listen to me. You know, I think people label you as crazy the moment that you're like, hey, that's not right. When you go against something that people have been doing for such a long time, people are like, hey, man, that's so weird. Like, what are you talking about? But I didn't even have the language to even communicate that to, firstly, my mom, who just didn't know why I was withdrawing. But I just knew I couldn't. What I had to do for myself in that moment, I was like, I gotta step back from this and look at it differently and do something different for now.
How did you feel when that happened, and what was the consequences of that happening?
I think when I decided to withdraw, I was at peace a little bit more, because I didn't feel like I had to save anybody, I had to say anything. I just was like, I don't have to see it. If it's not in my periphery, it's none of my business. So I didn't really I went and did my Kawaja shit. Like, I was on some Kawaja shit. I was just doing white people shit. And just learning there. I was like, okay, well, what are white people doing? Let me go see what's going on there. You know, let me go check that out. Oh, wineries, y'all go to wineries? Okay, let's suss this out. I did feel bad because every time I did make an appearance, or I did go out into the community, or the community came to my house and they saw me, everyone would say things like, oh my God, Inchimar, you've been lost. We haven't seen you in a while. Like, we've missed you.
How did that make you feel?
I think in the moment it was annoying, but I look back and I actually believe a lot of it was genuine. Like, I actually think people genuinely were like, oh, like, we miss you being a part of this community. We miss experiencing things with you. We miss going through things with you as a collective, because that is the foundation of like South Sudanese communities. Like, you go through things with people. People like South Sudanese people, they've been going through turmoil together from the jump. We go through it together. I think you don't do something by yourself. You do it as a collective. So I genuinely was very annoyed. I was like, oh, I just don't want to hear people say these things to me. But as an older person now, I'm like, no, people genuinely actually probably did miss me. Because they saw me grow up, and then they would they won't see me for years, and then they'll see me again. They'll be like, whoa, who's this individual? They've lost so much of why I've developed into that person.
And I like that you said that, and I think it's very common that that is the case. What advice would you give someone right now that has probably gone through that you went through? What advice would you give them?
My fellow transgressors. I think first and foremost, it's healthy. Whenever you feel like there's a situation, there's a scenario where you don't feel valued or you don't value the same things that like members of community do anymore, it's okay to step back and go reevaluate that. The other thing that I will say is continue to keep in contact with people who are still part of that. And I kept in contact with like a lot of my cousins, and I could still find out what's going on in the community. And once I started hearing like little things, I was like, oh, so the community is changing. Okay. In my absence. Amazing. Now I want to come back in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the healthiest thing to do. Choosing yourself in South Sudanese communities is not valued. It's not valued. You choose yourself. You're like, why? Yongu Loy, what are you doing?
See, what I like about that is I think now it's very important because you are making a movement on, hey, like, I need to do something about it. And it's important because, like, the more we do that, the more our parents will understand, like, okay, we're here to understand and try to support you guys. So it's good that you did that, and I'm glad that it's normal because I think a lot of people are going through that and feel like they're the only people going through that. Yeah. So I hope this will help someone that is going through that and realize that, like, you went through that and you went past it and you are now in a better place. So with that being said, that all happened in Perth, correct?
Yeah.
So why did you move to Melbourne, and how was that like? I already know what you're gonna say, but I want people to know about how that was like. So, how was that?
Melbourne. Melbourne was actually a very rich time for me.
So, when did you get there?
Mate, I moved to Melbourne. Next weekend, boom, Dan Andrews is popping out our TVs.
Yeah, because it was COVID-19, so it happened.
Babe, it was COVID-19.
Yeah.
COVID-19.
All right, so you moved there in 2020. So how was that? Sorry that Dan Andrews made it a bit harder for you at the start.
Shout out to Dan Andrews and the North Face. You know what? Moving to Melbourne was probably one of the best decisions I will ever make in my life. First and foremost, South Sudanese women don't leave their families. Like, it's like they do, but it's not. It's kind of frowned upon. It's kind of people. I definitely noticed, like when I went back to Perth for a holiday, like people were like, why don't you just come back home? Like, why you gotta do all this stuff? Like, why you gotta be so far away from the family? Like, nobody is happy for you when you move away as a woman. It's difficult, especially when you're not doing, like, you're not working this, like, traditional job, 9 to 5, you're working for the government. Like, it's a bit, but still then, they don't want you to move. So I am happy I made that move because I grew the fuck up. I think I grew up so much, like, leaving my family and just, like, having to depend on me, which was a bit of pressure because I was like, I can't let these people know that I'm struggling. Because they kind of they're preying on my downfall.
How did you overcome that? And how often did that thought linger in your head?
I think when I lived in Melbourne, I lived in a really good atmosphere. Like, I lived in a really lovely home in Footscray. I had some great people around me in that residence. And then I also had, like, incredible jobs. And I just had, like, amazing support systems within that. So I kind of just, like, figured it out in a way. It was during my time in Melbourne that, like, I decided to go to therapy, like, for myself and actually return and keep going, which I hadn't ever done. I've kind of, like, tried therapy, but I just didn't think it was for me. But this time I, like, stuck to it. I learned how to be fiscally responsible. You know, you have to pay bills, you have to pay for rent, you have to make food, etc., etc. Things that were my mom's responsibility when I lived in the house, you know? Yeah. Like, I never really truly had to think about that. But also just having to look after yourself. Like, baramu, to hold yourself. Like, what does that look like? What does that mean when you don't have that family support anymore? Like, it definitely matures you quicker than I would ever actually imagine. Yeah, but it's a tougher road.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you went down the road of seeing a therapist and doing that. How hard was that before you went and saw one? And how important is it to see one? And what would your advice be for someone that is thinking about seeing one?
You know, I know we're in this phase where, it's not a phase, but there's a conversation where, like, black people do really want to seek out therapy, and they actually want to work through a lot of the things that have occurred to us, whether that's on a global systemic level or within our local government or within where we're staying or just within our own families and communities. But I know we want to do that with people who would have those similar like experiences as us. And that was my goal. I wanted to go to a black female therapist in Melbourne, which is harder than you.
That's what I was going to say. That's incredible. You did a great job. And that I think is important because I hope that this encourages more people that look like us, that want to be in that field, but feel intimidated. It's good because you would change someone's life like yours. And it's important for someone who has the skill for that to actually go and do it. You know, I would love to go and be able to know that I could go see a therapist because I know there's black males out there that are in that field. So it's very lucky that you found one, and I encourage people to go out there. If anyone is really interested in doing that, you know, someone that looks like us, please do it because it will change a lot of people's lives.
I found them, but I didn't end up going to them. So shout out to the 2 female therapists in Melbourne. Shout out to you guys. One of them actually follows me on Twitter, so we're still cool. Yeah, it's cool.
Well, you just in general, you should go and do it.
Oh,
but therapy in general, no matter what, you know, it doesn't matter whether the color of the skin is, as long as you are trying to go there and get some help and be heard, I think that's important. You know, obviously, but if there is kids that are doing that and they kind of felt afraid of doing it because of their skin color, I feel like there's more of a reason to do it because some people do want to only speak to people that they think they can relate to their pain and their story.
And
so,
can I quickly speak to that? What I did was during my search, I wanted an LGBTQIA plus friendly therapist. I wanted a therapist that was anti-racist or was committed to practicing anti-racism. I also wanted a therapist that was feminist-based, and I found that. I found that in a white woman, but I found it.
Yeah. And that's amazing because what you did there that was important is you went looking for something and you knew what you wanted. And that's the most important thing because when you kind of have an idea of what you want, you can find it.
Yeah, you cancel out. You just
exactly.
cancel out.
Yeah,
you just cancel out your searches. And the thing is, there's so many wonderful like search engines where you can find the people that you need to. Honestly, It's there. And I think ever since moving to London, I've said to myself, like, yeah, we have all this access to help. Like, we are also worthy of seeking out that help.
For sure.
It's there for us. Sorry, we are citizens too. We might not always feel like it, but it doesn't negate us from like accessing these systems.
So I like that. And, you know, you answered the first half of the question or the first question of that whole idea of therapy. The second question is, what advice would you give someone who is trying to seek out that but is unsure, is on the fence right now?
All right, disclaimer, first and foremost, I believe one of my deepest beliefs is that you are the expert in your own life. Nothing Bull and Ayuol can say that would make you feel like we can have, like everyone's an expert in their own life. You're living your truth, you're living your existence. The second thing to that, what would I say to a young South Sudanese person who is thinking of seeking therapy? Do it. There's a reason why you're thinking about it. And that's whatever that is, whatever exploration you feel like you have to go on, that's valid. Seek it out. If you have the means to, seek it out.
I love that. And, you know, another reason why I wanted to come and sit down with you, and a lot of people might know you through, you know, you being a model. And that's the reason why you are here in London right now. Talk about that. How did you get involved in that? And, yeah, let's start off with that. How did you get involved in that?
All right. Ayuol, the model is just another facet of a performance. There we go. It's another like facet of performing. How did I get into modeling? So I remember as like a younger person, maybe in my teens, people used to like come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, like you're so tall. Are you a model? You should be a model." And I think I just got tired of that shit. So I started just like seeking it out for myself. I'm like, oh, like what are the modeling agencies in Perth? And like kind of looked out for that. And then my cousin was already signed to Chadwick's, and she invited me to like one of their Christmas parties one year, and I went with her as a +1, and that's when I met like my mother agent. She was like, I think you look amazing. We would love to just like sit down and have a conversation. And from there we had a conversation, and then I got signed shortly after. Yeah.
That's amazing. So from that, doing it because you just got so fed up of people just claiming that you are, to now doing it how's that been? Because it didn't seem like you wanted to do it in the first place, but you kind of just did it anyways. So how's that been?
I did not want to do it. I'm supposed to be working at the Department of Child Protection right now in Western Australia, you know,
there you go.
reuniting children with their families or something.
I love that.
Yeah. It's funny, man. It's just like, I don't know. This shit is a joke. Like, you just like, if someone's like, oh, like, this could be good for you. You're like, all right, man, let me just suss it out. Let me just suss it out. And it's kind of worked to my advantage, and I've still been able to do some sort of like learning that is still important to what I actually wanted to do initially. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like, how did that? I don't even know how it happened, but I'm here.
Well, now you do have a platform, and now you are South Sudanese model, and there's a lot of young Sudanese girls out there, not whether young or whatever, that, you know, do idolize that because they can now see someone that looks like them getting the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah.
Right? So how important is it for you now, being a South Sudanese woman in the modeling industry?
You know, it's so weird because I be chilling.
And I don't say it as, you know, a pressure question.
Yeah.
But you do have people that definitely look up to you. I've got a young sister. Shout out to Jennifer. Jennifer, if you're watching this, you know, shout out to Jennifer, and she definitely is inspired by you. And you know, she's 11 at the moment.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is young people that look up to you. You know, I know that you know that. So
Don't look up to Ayuol Manyok. Nah.
No, you've done a lot of incredible things. You know, you've from moving to Melbourne to moving to here. I think that's incredible. So, you know, does that linger in your mind? And if it does, how important is it now?
Dude, I honestly, let's be honest. The only people that I feel like I'm a role model to or whatever people want to claim is probably like my nieces and my nephews. So
That's so cool. That's
who I would actually.
Okay, for those how important is them being where you are in your
for
position?
them, yeah, I think for them because they're like in our family, they're like first generation South Sudanese Australian. Like these were the kids that were born in Australia from like our family. So it's like that's important. Like I know with whatever cultural differences and turmoil that I had, they're going to have it so much worse. Like, they're just going to go through it. But that's fine. And I want to let them know that's totally cool. It's fine.
How much has modeling shaped who you are and your identity?
Yo, Mom's life, the last month, I think I've been to like 6-7 countries.
That's incredible, especially for a South Sudanese person who never really seen any other place. But be able to get that chance to see 7 different countries is incredible. Even for me to come down here to London has been incredible. I don't want to leave, but I'm glad I got to come down here and talk to people and talk to you and experience something different. Yeah. So for you to have 7 different countries on your, you know, on your list, under your belt, that's incredible. So
last month.
Yeah, so that's incredible in the last month as well. So talk about that, and so how has modeling shaped your life?
Yeah. Definitely, okay, number one, I'm going to speak from a financial standpoint. Being able to look after myself, being able to seek out things that I always wanted to. Like, I went to Disneyland. I've always wanted to go
That's
to
incredible.
Disneyland. Yeah, but I went to Disneyland. That shit was dope as fuck. Like, I feel like that was me feeding my inner child and, like, my inner child dreams. Being able to look after your family. I think a lot of us know that when you're South Sudanese and you're living in the West, you don't just earn money for yourself. No, baby. You got to look after, like, the extended family, the people who didn't make it to the West. So being able to look after people like that and, like, not feeling like it's a fucking strain and being cool with that. Being like, oh, I'm blessed. So one thing I can do is bless others. Cool, bet, it's done. It's easy. The other standpoints, being able to, so I'm a huge reader. Well, I was. Right now it's kind of ghetto, but I was a huge reader. And being able to see places that I read about and experience the cultures, being able to, I read a page or I read a sentence and I go to that place. I wouldn't have thought that would happen for me, you know? But being a South Sudanese person, I know my grandparents didn't see the world in that way. But here I am being able to do it. Like, it feels nice to, you know, I don't know, introduce that to our family. Like, oh, Ayuol, she's here. Ayuol's there. Or my niece is being like, oh, Toto, like, lives in London. Like, oh, my aunt lives in London. Because, like, growing up, you went to school with heaps of kids who are like, oh, my aunt lives in PNG. My uncle lives in America. You know, there's always space. Space always existed. But we usually stay in our own little, like, cocoon. So that's been nice. And the other thing is learning being independent.
I love that, and I didn't want to make this whole conversation about the modeling, and I'm glad we talk about it because I know you're a lot more interesting than that. You've got a lot more other fascinating hobbies and all that, so I can't get into that. But before we move on to the next question, who is a South Sudanese person in the industry that you would like to work with in the future?
Probably all of them.
Okay, drop some names out here. What do you say?
All right. Well, okay. I like work. First, a dude, Ducky. That would be very interesting too.
You're highly inspired by her.
I did work with Ducky a little bit. We were on the same show.
What was the show called?
It was the closing show for Melbourne Fashion Festival, if I'm correct, this year. Yeah, I got to like see her in the flesh. And a couple of months before that, we met her sister, Nikki, and she's just, you know, niggas be gorgeous in person. Niggas actually be like, wow, like, oh, you see them on the media, it's like, it's cool. But then you like see them in person, you're like, everything's so much better in like 4K, like right there when you're there.
Yeah.
People are beautiful.
I love that.
Who else? Anok. I think just like all the girlies. There's so many.
That's the best answer as well.
There's so many, like literally, anytime I get the opportunity to work with a South Sudanese woman, vibes.
Yeah.
Vibes.
Another question, actually. What's your biggest highlight being in that industry? I know traveling, I guess, but is there another highlight on top of that?
Biggest highlight? I think it's just getting into rooms that you know when people are like, I would have never imagined, like dead ass, like never would have imagined being in some very certain rooms. You're like it's a joke.
Yeah.
Like it's hee hee ha. Like it's a joke, you know?
Yeah.
Like I never would have imagined like going for certain casting. It's just like you're just cruising on life. You didn't think that's gonna happen.
I love that. How much has reading helped you to even get in those rooms?
Oh yeah, well, applied knowledge is power. So having a little bit of a syllabus, you know, you've kind of collated all this information over time, and you've also grown through experiences and tribulations, and then to be able to just like, I don't know, I think what a lot of the books I've read have taught me is just like, humans will be human. It is what it is. I'm a dickhead on some days. Some days I'm great. Some people are dickheads on some days. Some days they're great.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to hold that shit on them a lot of the times, but all I know is it's helped me put things into perspective. I think that's what reading has actually like put into my life, perspective. Because when I didn't read, it was like I understood this much of the world. When I started to read, my world started to like open up a little bit. I started to have a little more understanding, different cultures, different languages, different clothing, different industries. It just expands your world a little bit. And when you expand your world and you're in those rooms, you know how to hold yourself.
So that's important. I'm glad that we got this conversation. One thing that I always like to ask people when I talk to is, because of the brand, it's called the Seed Network, and I believe you are here to plant something.
Yeah.
Right? What do you think you are here to plant?
I think I'm a transgressor. I don't think I've kind of done what I'm supposed to do. Yes, I went to uni. No, I did not finish. No, I did not stay at home. Yes, I did leave. Like, I did a lot of things that you're not supposed to do, right? And that's okay. It's okay. It's, you know, one thing about growing up in the West that I've learned, and just observing a lot of different people over the last, like, couple of years, is, like, choose a little path, go down it. It doesn't work. Guess what? Maybe you can redirect that shit all the time. I think as South Sudanese people, we get so hung up about this one thing not working, and it just pulls you down, and a lot of us will pull each other down like, oh, someone's so failed. You live at you can stand up, you can get yourself up and do something different, and you will be okay. Especially in Australia, you can do that. You can do a little, you can do it. And I feel like in this journey, I've kind of had to do that a couple of times. I do it often. Every day doesn't fit. Every day is not great. Every day is not like, I want to do this shit. But I have to always remember, like, why am I doing this shit? Could I be doing something else? No, actually, I like what I do.
I love that, and it's so important. And yeah, that's one thing that is lacking. We just have to keep pulling ourselves down, I reckon.
We do pull ourselves down for sure.
That's whack. But honestly, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to sit down and to hear what you have to say. So thank you so much. I know it's a bit late. We're at a pub right now.
We're at a pub.
And I know, so like, we don't want to hold them back, but we had a really great conversation so far, and I'm so blessed to be able to have a chance to sit down with you. Yeah. So thank you so much once again, Ayuol. Any shout-outs right now?
Shout out to all the Ayuols.
Ayuol.
No, but Mum's life, I think our interactions have been quite a blessing. We've been able to sit down and have conversations together that I feel like neither of us have been able to have with our own people within the community. So that felt really special. So thank you so much for being giving of yourself and just stripping yourself of any ego and just actually wanting to move the community forward, especially young folks. So shout out to South Sudanese youth, wherever you are. I don't give a fuck. I really care about you, and I think you're going to do well. Yeah.
You heard it first. There you go. Thank you so much once again, and thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for making it this far. I'm very glad. This is a dream come true. We've finally done it. How far is it from here to from Melbourne? 16,000 miles.
16,905 kilometers.
There you go. That's how far I've traveled to come down and have this conversation.
That's right.
So guys, thank you once again. It's been a blessing.
Thank you.